Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. The Prime Minister takes the stand expressing frustration at a federal inquiry into election foreign interference. Plus, preparations are underway for the rescue attempt of a stranded baby orca on Vancouver Island. And O.J. Simpson dead at 76.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks so much for joining us. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau expressed frustration during a federal inquiry that intelligence leaked to the media about foreign interference had been sensationalized. He testified publicly that leaks, which contributed to calls for the public hearing into meddling allegations during Canada's last two elections.
Regardless of the fact that there were inconsistencies, there were uncorroborated information in the leaks, there were also things that were flat out wrong. Sometimes in denying something, you're giving information you couldn't. And throughout, my preoccupation and why these leaks were of such deep concern was that we couldn't actually correct the record without, in some cases, confirming the tradecraft and the work that women and men in our security agencies and sources relied upon by our security agencies to keep Canadians and our institutions safe without putting them at risk, without sharing with adversaries some of the information or the methods that we use to keep Canadians safe. And that's part of the reason for the complex nature of a public inquiry into issues of foreign interference.
The Canadian government will allow 30-year amortization periods on insured mortgages for first-time homebuyers purchasing newly built homes. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland made the announcement in Toronto today, saying it would take effect August 1st. The Canadian Home Builders Association has advocated for longer amortization periods, saying 5 more years would help with affordability and spur more construction. Freeland also said the government will nearly double the amount first-time homebuyers can withdraw from RRSPs to buy a new home.
Right now, you can withdraw up to $35,000 from your RRSP to use toward a down payment. In many cities in Canada, though, that's not enough. Younger Canadians know they need to save more for longer to afford that first down payment. So, to help Canadians purchase their first home, today I'm announcing that we are increasing the withdrawal limit for the home buyers plan from $35,000 to $60,000, effective April 16th this year. This, plus the tax-free first home savings account, can be combined, which will give younger Canadians more tools to save what is actually needed for a down payment.
People who make such withdrawals are also getting more time to begin repayment, up to 5 years in total rather than 2. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says a new bill now before the legislature would stop Ottawa from directly funding provincial agencies without approval from her government. Smith says recent federal housing deals with Alberta municipalities that were made without her government's involvement were the last straw. She says existing deals will be honored.
Section 92 of the Constitution states that municipalities fall within the exclusive jurisdiction of the provinces. The terms could not be more clear or more certain. And yet, as we've come to see far too often, the federal government extends itself too far and interferes in our provincial jurisdiction. And we aren't the only province to see this and be troubled by it. And many of us spoke about pursuing legislation similar to what is in existence in Quebec, which prohibits the federal government from bypassing their provincial government when making deals with municipalities. In fact, the Quebec minister made sure that we all had a copy of that legislation before we left that day. So today, this is no longer just talk in Alberta. Today, we are taking back more of our jurisdictional control and telling Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his cabinet that they cannot make deals without our express approval.
The Alberta government says half of the 100 new frontline police officers promised a year ago for Edmonton and Calgary are now on the job. The rest are to be deployed by the end of this year. The United Conservative government announced the step-up police presence to tackle crime in the province's two biggest cities. $10 million in initial funding is to be split between Edmonton and Calgary for the officers while long-term agreements are worked out. The provincial government announced new strategies and funding to support emergency medical services professionals. Health Minister Adriana LaGrange made the announcement this afternoon.
Albertans deserve an EMS system that is equipped to meet their needs, which is why, as part of Budget 2024, Alberta's government is allocating funds towards reducing emergency response times. With an additional $25 million allocated to the Emergency Medical Services EMS Vehicle Capital Program, part of a total investment of $35 million over 3 years, we are bolstering our emergency response capabilities. So this funding will support the replacement of EMS vehicles at the end of their life cycles and ensure existing vehicles are adequately maintained and equipped to meet the diverse needs of both urban and rural communities.
LaGrange says this will increase response times, capacity, and stability. The families of two murdered Ontario schoolgirls have failed to get access to government records about serial killer Paul Bernardo. The Supreme Court of Canada says it won't hear arguments about the release of prison and parole documents that are used to decide Bernardo's prospects for parole. Bernardo is serving a life sentence for kidnapping, sexual assault, and murders of Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey in the early 1990s and has been designated as a dangerous offender. His controversial transfer to a medium security prison last year prompted demands for change, with the federal ombudsman for victims of crime saying it should be a turning point for more information to be shared with crime victims. O.J. Simpson is dead at the age of 76. Simpson's attorney told TMZ he died last night in Las Vegas, surrounded by his children and grandchildren after battling pancreatic cancer. The world watched as the former football star went on trial in Los Angeles for the 1994 murder of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ronald Goldman. Live TV coverage of his arrest after a famous slow-speed chase marked a stunning fall from grace for the sports hero. He was acquitted of the murders, but in 2008, Simpson was found guilty of a hotel room armed robbery in Las Vegas. More bad publicity for Flair Airlines. The luggage of a man flying on Flair from Toronto to Abbotsford, BC, somehow ended up at a home in Saskatoon, emptied of its contents. Riley Phillips says he placed an air tag in his suitcase and contacted police when he realized where it was. Saskatoon police told Phillips they had found the luggage, but there was nothing inside. Some items like pajamas, socks, and underwear were later found strewn about the home. But Phillips figures thieves made off with $1,000 worth of his belongings. South of the border, during his visit to the U.S., Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida was urging American lawmakers at the Capitol to consider the importance of global commitments at a time of tension in the Asia-Pacific and deep skepticism in Congress about U.S. involvement abroad.
As we meet here today, I detect an undercurrent of self-doubt among some Americans about what your role in the world should be. This self-doubt is arising at the time when our world is at history's turning point. Although the world looks to your leadership, the U.S. should not be expected to do it all. As the United States' closest friend, tomodachi, the people of Japan are with you side by side to assure the survival of liberty.
In other news, dozens of aid trucks entered Gaza through Rafah crossing Thursday amid international pressure for Israel to allow more humanitarian supplies into the barricaded region. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made comments after Iran's supreme leader again promised to retaliate against Israel over the killings of Iranian generals in a strike on its consulate in Syria. On Thursday, Netanyahu said, quote, "We are in the middle of a war in Gaza. At the same time, we continue our efforts to return our hostages, but we are also preparing for scenarios of challenges from other arenas. We establish a simple principle: whoever hurts us, we hurt them. We are prepared to meet the needs of Israel, both in defense and attack," end quote. Poland's parliament is holding a long-awaited debate on abortion. Here is Vanessa Gira with the Associated Press.
We're in the halls of the Polish parliament where a long-awaited debate on abortion is about to begin. Lawmakers are going to debate proposals for liberalizing the abortion law. Currently, Poland has one of the most restrictive laws in all of Europe. The reality is a bit different, however. Many women, in fact, have abortions. They either travel abroad or, in most cases, they order pills online, which are sent often from the Netherlands or some other country. Nothing is really expected to change anytime soon. There are a number of politicians with a lot of power who are conservative, and they would not vote to change the law. One of them is the president, who has the power of veto. The other is the Speaker of Parliament, who has already banned abortion advocates from even entering the gallery in the parliament to attend the debate today.
Well, it looks like spring is finally here, the weather being one indicator, but another one is the return of the hashtag Slow Your Roll signs popping up in Lethbridge neighborhoods. The campaign aims to encourage people to slow down while driving, watch for pedestrians, and just be aware of their general surroundings when they're behind the wheel. The initiative was founded by Lethbridge realtor Chris DiPasquale, following the April 13th, 2020 death of 10-year-old Charles McIntyre, who was hit by a vehicle on Lethbridge's west side. He says his organization's partnership with the Lethbridge Police Service is helping to alert motorists to be careful in playground zones.
It's really important that I mention this, that we are almost 4 years to the day of the tragic passing of Charles on April 13th of 2020. So for all of this to happen this week is really big for us, because a year ago we actually helped with the city of Lethbridge harmonize the play and school playground zones and the school zones, and a year later we're happy to be working with LPS and collaborate on a new project with the continuation of safety in playground zones.
People in the community looking to put up a sign on their property can obtain one via the hashtag Slow Your Roll Facebook page or at the campaign website. The NMAC Center has undertaken the development of a master plan to determine its direction over the next 10 to 20 years. The report was completed by the Innovation Group, an organization selected through an open RFP process. Part of the scope of the RFP is to determine the requirements of the future facility, determine the best way to proceed for the community, engage the public, and determine the economic impact the NMAC Center provides to Lethbridge annually. This master plan would only serve as a guiding document for now. Pronghorns Athletics hosted the 57th Blue and Gold Awards ceremony earlier this week, celebrating the remarkable achievements of student athletes during the 2023-24 season. In this next report, BCN's Naveen Day heard from some of this year's winners.
Students and staff at the University of Lethbridge's Pronghorn Athletics Department took home some extra hardware this week at the 57th Annual Blue and Gold Awards ceremony. Among them are Chris Alexander in men's swimming. He won Male Athlete of the Year for his exceptional performances in the pool, which include winning gold in the 50-meter backstroke for the second consecutive year at U Sports. Also in swimming is Female Athlete of the Year, Delaney Lehman. She showcased her talent and tenacity at the Canada West Championships, securing a silver medal in the 50-meter breaststroke and a bronze in the 400-meter freestyle relay, all while emerging as the highest point scorer for her team. She says despite the team having a great year, she hopes they come back next year even stronger.
I think we can always do better. I think we stayed nice and high up in the rankings all year. We were top 10 all year. I think we could just keep going forward. Like, everybody just gets stronger and stronger as we go. And it'll be just an incredible experience for all of us.
And a first for this year was Coach of the Year. The inaugural award was given to women's basketball head coach Dave Wachnock.
This is up here. I mean, anytime you get stuff from your peers and people you respect and people that you work with, I mean, it means a ton. So, but I'm really humble with it. I mean, you don't get these things without great support.
At a media event held Thursday morning, Pronghorn Athletics also announced a fundraising event called the Pronghorn Gala and Cabaret. Events coordinator Taylor Penny says, after the formal part of the evening, the entertainment that follows is sure to be a hit.
At 8 p.m., we are lucky to have Pronghorn community members Cal Toth and Anna McBrien engage us in a captivating dueling pianos performance. Cal and Anna are known in the community to provide a fun and engaging performance, and we're excited to have them be part of our event. The set list for the evening is by request, and the performers can be persuaded to play your request by including a donation. All proceeds from the evening will be donated back to Pronghorn Athletics.
The Pronghorn Gala and Cabaret is taking place on April 18th in the Science Commons atrium on campus. Tickets are available at gohorns.ca/gala. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
And on the West Coast, preparations are well underway for a complex attempt to rescue a stranded killer whale calf from a remote tidal lagoon in Zeballos, BC, on the northwest of Vancouver Island. Crews have been moving large nets and hukula lines, directional line devices used in traditional Hawaiian fishing communities, to a staging area at the lagoon.
And we just saw the fellow Paul Cottrell from the fisheries department showed him some pictures of that we took of the whale. He said it still looks good. They're still feeling the health. I mean, the health is a concern. The chief did say it must be getting hungry. It must be hungry. They also played me some of the audio that they've got of the young calf crying, making its calls. They are. I gotta say, it's haunting. It's haunting, and they're haunted by that too. They know they know that this animal's crying out in this lagoon. As of now, they're just doing planning. What we saw today, they're plowing the gravel road to where they think that where I feel their landing area is going to be. We're going to try to land this whale. The road's been freshly plowed. There's nets out there. They were laying out nets today in the parking lot. We saw airplanes flying over doing it looked like surveillance work. There's all kinds of things going on, but there's not really a set deadline of when this is going to happen.
Poor little thing. I hope he gets to open water soon. Well, it was a lovely day in southern Alberta, and more nice days are ahead in the short term. I'll be back with a full look at weather right after the break. Welcome back. Well, our region was the warm spot in the province this afternoon at 16.7 degrees in Lethbridge. Not bad considering the hot spot in all of Canada was 17 degrees in Quebec. So we're actually looking at temperatures raising even a little bit higher in the days to come. Looking to Friday there, 18 for a high. Same thing for Saturday with clear skies. Going to be a lovely weekend before us. 19 degrees on Sunday and then down to 11 on Monday. Still not bad, but then look what happens there. Monday night, we're getting down to 0. We could see a chance of rain or flurries Monday night. And then into Tuesday, we are seeing rain and snow, high of 4 degrees. Wednesday, looking at a snow with a high of only 2 degrees. So we are getting that little system coming through with the precipitation. Average high for this time of year, 12 degrees. Average low, -2. High temperature on this day happened back in 1943 rather, sorry, it was 22 degrees, and it was a chilly -26 back in 1940. Sun rose this morning at 6:45, sunset this evening at 8:20, giving us 13 hours and 35 minutes of daylight, 4 minutes longer than we saw yesterday. Okay, on the west coast tomorrow, 13 for a high in Victoria. Vancouver could see a chance of drizzle, 12 degrees for a high there, 16 for a high in Edmonton under clear skies, and 15 is the expected high tomorrow in Calgary with a mix of sun and cloud. A little bit more drizzly as we get into Saskatchewan. We are seeing a 30% chance of showers, both Saskatoon and Regina. It doesn't show it on the graph. Last I looked, they're seeing a 30% chance tomorrow. 15 for a high in Saskatoon, 16 in Regina, 15 in Winnipeg with clear skies, and then a lot more precipitation as we get further east. So Toronto looking at 40% chance of showers, high of 10 degrees. Ottawa seeing 5 to 10 millimeters of rain, risk of a thunderstorm, high of 17 degrees, 18 for a high in Montreal. Montreal seeing a lot of rain as well, could see a chance of thunder showers. Now Fredericton looking at 5 to 10 millimeters of rain expected tomorrow, high of 13. Halifax, we're looking at a rainfall warning in effect, could see up to 15 millimeters of rain, could see fog, could see risk of thunder showers, up to 80 winds along the exposed parts of the coast there, high of 10 degrees there, 12 for a high in Charlottetown, could see showers, and then clear skies expected tomorrow in St. John with a high of 7 degrees. So there you have it. That is your forecast. Air Canada has resumed flights between Canada and Israel for the first time since the start of the Israel-Hamas war. The 6-month pause for flights between Toronto and Tel Aviv ended with the resumption of flights April 9th, and once per week flights between Montreal and Tel Aviv will resume in May. Air Canada suspended service to Ben Gurion International Airport on October 8th following the terror attack by Hamas militants in southern Israel the day before the war declaration by Israel. The airline says it has undertaken an extensive safety analysis, including consultations with government authorities, unions representing its flight crews, and security experts. The federal government is still advising Canadians to avoid non-essential travel to Israel due to the ongoing hostilities. Wind and solar operators in Canada are being urged to make their infrastructure more resilient to climate change. Renewable energy operators from across the country are gathered at a conference in Calgary to discuss the risks climate change-related extreme weather poses to their industry and how they can work towards reducing the likelihood of future catastrophic grid outages. In March of this year, a severe hailstorm damaged thousands of panels at a solar farm in Texas, causing massive property damage. A report says grocery inflation is expected to fall below 2% this spring and stay roughly between 1% and 2% for the rest of the year. Farm Credit Canada's annual food and beverage report says it's expecting food price increases beyond 2024 to stabilize around pre-pandemic levels. Grocery prices helped push Canada's inflation rate down to 2.8% in February, but slowing inflation doesn't mean prices overall are dropping. Statistics Canada says between February 2021 and February 2024, grocery prices rose 21.6%. Now here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down 89 points on the day to finish at 22,110. The Dow was down 2 points to 38,459. The S&P 500 was up 38 points to 51.99, and the Nasdaq was up 271 points to finish at 16,442. West Texas Intermediate oil was down 67 cents to 85.54 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 12 cents to $1.77 US. Gold was up 38.47 to $2,372.51 US an ounce, and silver was up 50 cents to 28.44 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.57 per bushel, barley is at $6.47, canola is at $14.22, and corn is at $7.80 per bushel. Live cattle were up $1.18 to $180.25. Feeder cattle were up 90 cents to $239.18. Lean hogs were down 30 cents to $91.45, and the Canadian dollar was even over the past 24 hours at 73.05 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spent several hours on the stand during a federal inquiry and expressed frustration that intelligence leaked to the media about foreign interference had been sensationalized. He testified publicly about the leaks, which contributed to calls for the public hearing into meddling allegations of Canada's last two elections. Coming up, I speak with Brenna Scott from Canadian Blood Services Blood Plasma Donor Center here in Lethbridge. She explains what blood plasma is and how it's processed to help those with chronic health infections. Stay tuned for this very educational interview. Also, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. Also, be sure to check out our website anytime to check out a number of our stories and interviews. Well, if one of our loved ones should ever find themselves in the hospital in need of blood or blood plasma, we are so thankful for a supply of uncontaminated blood to help us out. But where does it come from, and how does the process work? Well, to talk about this in more detail, I'm bringing in Brenna Scott. She's the Business Development Manager with the Lethbridge Canadian Blood Services Blood Plasma Donor Center. Welcome to Bridge City News again, Brenna. Great to have you on.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely. Okay, so maybe first explain why blood and blood plasma donations are so important.
Well, you never know when a loved one or yourself you're going to require a blood or plasma donation. So we really want to make sure that Canada's Lifeline is strong and we have what's needed for any health conditions that Canadian patients might have either now or in the future as well.
Maybe explain what blood plasma is exactly. How does it differ from regular blood that someone might want to donate?
So plasma is a protein-rich yellow liquid that helps blood components like your red cells, your white cells, and your platelets circulate throughout your body. Plasma is 55% of your total blood volume, and what it does is it helps your body repair and heal tissue and helps fight infections.
Okay, so it's better to fight infections with the plasma instead of with the blood, basically?
Certain infections, so a lot of chronic health conditions, for example, kidney disease, liver disease, nervous system disorder, they require the medications that are made from plasma to help fight these chronic health conditions that they do have.
Okay, now that's fascinating. Now, is there a process that a patient has to go through in order to be administered, in order for plasma to be administered to patients? What's the process there?
Absolutely. So once our plasma is collected, it's all sent to our fractionator. First, it's frozen, and then it's sent to our fractionator and made into medications. This process of making it into medications does take about 9 months. So it's made into these plasma protein products medications. And the most common one is IVIG. And once that medication is made, then it is given to the patients for whichever health condition they have.
Okay, so plasma is actually made into medication.
Yes, our plasma here is, yeah.
Yeah, that is wild, absolutely. Now, does plasma have different types, kind of like blood types? We always hear of A positive and B. Is plasma the same?
It is not. So for plasma, there aren't any types. It's all just pooled together. But if people are interested in knowing what blood type they are, when they come in for that first donation, after they donate, they will find out within 48 hours what their blood type is as well. Because I know people always like to know which blood type they are.
Yeah, exactly. So who maybe is not able to donate plasma? Are there certain restrictions?
There are certain health conditions that might defer you from donating plasma or whole blood, but there usually are, just because you're not able to donate whole blood, you still might be able to donate plasma. For example, if you've had malaria, you cannot donate whole blood, but you can donate plasma. So we always encourage, if you have certain health conditions, to check out our website at blood.ca or call our 188 to donate to check if their health condition is able to donate, as well as their medications. There might be certain restrictions. For example, if you're on a certain medication, you might be deferred for a short period of time, but not forever. Or if you're pregnant, you'll be deferred until after 6 months after you've had the baby. Certain restrictions like that are in plasma as well.
Okay. So, Brenna, let's talk about how a person can go about donating plasma. I'm assuming it's the same process as giving blood. Maybe walk us through that a little bit.
For sure. So first you'd book an appointment either on blood.ca, calling 188 to donate, or coming in, booking an appointment in person. You want to make sure that you have a piece of government issue photo ID with you, and then you're also really well hydrated, not just the day of, but it's also the day before. Then you would come in and you'll do a screening questionnaire. If you've donated whole blood, it is very similar to that. After you do this questionnaire, you'll be brought into the screening room with our plasma associate. They'll go through the questionnaire with you. They'll ask if you're on any medications. They'll go over any health conditions you have. Then you're brought over to the donor bed. It's still just the one needle in your arm. And then your blood comes out as normal. And it actually spins in a centrifuge beside the donor. And that centrifuge spins the plasma out of your blood. We keep the plasma, and then your red blood cells and your platelets are all given back to you through that same needle. So we do that back and forth process, kind of like dialysis, until we get a full plasma donation. And how much you're able to donate is based on your height and weight. So, a very tall, for example, football player might be able to donate more than, a small 5 foot tall female. And then after you donate, it takes about 35 to 40 minutes on the donor bed. We'll have you sit for 5 minutes afterwards just to make sure you're feeling okay. And then you'll get some great snacks and we'll send you on your way.
Right. So it sounds like a little bit more of a tricky process than just donating blood. So I would assume that it takes longer as well.
Exactly. Yes. We do say set aside about an hour to be in the donation center, which we realize is, more time than it would be for whole blood. You're on that donor bed about 35 to 40 minutes.
Okay, actually, that's not bad considering it's almost like you're giving yourself a blood transfusion there. It's kind of
it's a very different process. And, when people see plasma for the first time, it is interesting to see because you're used to seeing your whole blood, that deep red color, but your plasma is this yellow kind of straw colored or liquid gold, as we call it. So it is different to see for that first time for sure.
That's bizarre. Compared to how long does it take to just give regular blood? It's more like
that
20 minutes or so, right?
Absolutely, yes. You're in the screening room the same amount of time, but on the donation bed, 10, 20 minutes. So it's definitely a little bit longer in plasma.
Okay, that's so fascinating. So how long can donated plasma be stored? What's the shelf life for it?
That's one of the things that's great about the plasma we collect, because there is no shelf life, because all the plasma that we collect is all sent to our fractionator and made into medications. So we use all of it. So it's a little bit different than whole blood that has that shelf life. We need to keep that whole blood at a certain level because we don't want to have too much, but we don't want to have not enough for patients. Where plasma, anything we collect, we are able to use to be made into those medications.
Okay. And on the flip side, how long can whole blood be kept?
Whole blood, I don't have the number off the top of my head. I believe it might be in the 40 to 50 day range, but I don't have that info. Yeah,
okay,
so definitely different.
Totally fine. And just curious, how have residents of Southern Alberta responded to the new plasma donor center?
We've had a really great response from the Lethbridge community. We were definitely a little nervous because we did open during COVID, right at the heat of that pandemic. We opened in December 2020, but we have had a great. We've had about 3,100 residents come in to donate plasma. But we are really hoping to get that number to about 4,000. So that's our goal for the next year, is to have 4,000 donors within Lethbridge.
That's amazing. So with that said, how many of us actually do donate plasma? What's the percentage of the population? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head. I know that we bring in 1,200-ish units of plasma a month. So we get about 12,000. A little bit more a year.
Right.
But across the population right now, we do have 9 donor centers. So we do have the most donors in Lethbridge, Sudbury, and Kelowna, because those were our first 3 sites that we opened. And then we've recently opened other ones all across Canada. Actually, within the last month, we've opened one in Windsor.
Okay.
So we're definitely building up that donor base across Canada, which is really important because right now, we've seen the past number of years the need for plasma really increase, not just in Canada, but within the world as well. So we're really trying to become more stable and self-sufficient here in Canada and less reliant on the United States in that global market.
Oh, certainly, absolutely. And you were saying your goal is sort of 40,000, that range in the next year.
Oh, our goal is 4,000 donors within Lethbridge. Yes, in the next
Lethbridge.
year.
Okay. So with that said, how many units of plasma do we actually need for Lethbridge? How much, compared to how much for the whole country?
We need about 15,000 units of plasma for the year in Lethbridge.
So, Brenna, what stops people from donating? Are people maybe scared to be around needles? I can see people being a little squeamish about that.
There's definitely a few factors that go into when people might not donate. Fear of needles might be one of them. And also, I think it's the fear of the unknown. People are pretty comfortable with a whole blood donation. You know what to expect. But plasma is still relatively new. We have a lot of people that don't know what plasma is and they don't know the process. So I think really explaining that process, bringing them in for a tour. Our staff are excellent at explaining each step of the process to make sure they're comfortable. But we do have a number of people that have gotten over that fear of needles. They still come in to donate anyway because they know how important it is. And then after they have the needle in, we'll cover it up and kind of tilt the machine away from you so you don't have to watch it if you don't want. And then we try to distract them. We have TVs in the center. We have nice cozy blankets. We have games. So we try to make it as great of a donor experience as possible to really kind of thank them for coming in.
Right. Keep them distracted for sure.
Exactly.
And then entice them with the cookie at the end or whatever it is. After giving plasma, I'm just curious, is there, I know you let them rest and you give them some sugar, but are there more risk factors after giving plasma compared to blood, or is it worse? I shouldn't say worse, but for giving blood.
We've actually found that donors aren't as tired after giving a plasma donation because you're getting those red cells back. So because of that, they don't feel nearly as tired, and your body is able to regenerate plasma within 48 hours. So even if you donated every week, that would be completely safe to do so. And we do have a number of donors that do come back on a weekly basis.
Oh, that's amazing. No, that's great. Thanks for answering that. And, of course, also, Brenna, people might also ask, how safe is our plasma today? Like, does each and every donation actually go through some tests?
Absolutely. So anyone that donates, we do take a couple vials of your whole blood, and it's all sent to our testing site in Calgary. So everyone is tested. If by chance that we find something in your blood that you're sick or, we find any kind of health condition, we will quarantine that plasma unit and not use it. So it is incredibly safe to donate plasma, and it's incredibly safe, the process and testing that goes through before we have it made into medications for Canadian patients.
Okay, great. And how are you doing there for volunteers here in Lethbridge? Is there a certain need in that department?
There's definitely a need for more volunteers. We do have a number in center, but we do have a few open spots still. And we do find usually we need some more in the summer because some of our students that do volunteer with us go home from university or college in the summer. So we kind of find that need as well. As well, and in the summer, we have community volunteers. So we try to be at a number of events in the community in the summer to help promote plasma, whether that be at Whoop Up Days or the farmers market or any kind of big events that are happening. So we always have that need to kind of bring in a couple new faces to help us with all those activities this summer.
Wonderful. And if any viewers here in Southern Alberta would like to donate plasma, where should they go and who should they call?
A couple different ways that you can book that plasma appointment. You can do so by downloading our free Give Blood app. You can book online at blood.ca. You can call 188 to donate, or you can just stop by in person. Often we do have same-day appointments available. So if you're over in the area, perhaps you're shopping at HomeSense, you can pop right by and we'd be able to take you.
Brenna, is there anything else you'd like to add that I didn't get to ask you?
Oh, I guess I will say one of the recent changes that we've had at the beginning of December in Canadian Blood Services is there used to be a deferral for people that lived in the United Kingdom or Ireland or France during that mad cow outbreak. And there used to be a deferral for both whole blood and plasma. And we've done a lot of research and studies into that. And at the beginning of December, we took that deferral off. So if you did live in those areas in the past, you are able to donate now. And that was a common question we got in the community of, they've lived in Canada for X amount of years, but we still weren't able to take them. So we are excited to hopefully bring in some new donors that have been deferred for years, and hopefully they'll give us a chance and try plasma.
Oh, that's wonderful news. Well, Brenna, thanks so much for being with us today. Appreciate having you on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's always a good educational piece there. Thanks so much for that. Brenna
Of
Scott.
course.
Yeah, Brenna Scott is the Business Development Manager with the Lethbridge Canadian Blood Services Blood Plasma Donor Center.
I think it's safe to say that parenting has always been a challenge. We learn from our successes and our failures. Books, training courses, and those with parenting experience also really helps along the way. Today we're joined by Abe Block, who's a parent, grandparent, and now even a great-grandparent, and a retired pastor here in Lethbridge. He has some parenting tips for us. Welcome back to Bridge City News, Abe.
Thank you. It's good to be here, and it's good to be with all the listeners that are tuning in.
Absolutely, and the viewers too. Now, one thing that probably hasn't changed over the years, Abe, is that siblings tend to have conflicts as they grow up together. Brothers and sisters, various disagreements and arguments. Do you have any advice on how to reduce the frequency of this to get your kids to maybe learn to disagree with each other and still love each other?
That's a major issue. Back in my day, and of course that was a while ago, you'll understand, things were a little different. You did mention that today things have changed. They've changed dramatically, but I think one of the biggest issues, Hal, is the lack of communication. I look at the world today and I understand the young people watching the world today, and what do they see? They see a lot of disagreement. They see a lot of arguing. They see a lack of communication in our society, in our governments relating to people and to us. Wars and rumors of wars. And you look at Haiti in the world today, if you're following that at all, I mean, it's absolute chaos. And you say to yourself, this is what our children are seeing. Is it any surprise that they think the natural thing is to disagree and to argue? The other issue could be that if you don't agree with me, you can't be my friend. And so I think that's one of the key issues. And so we as parents, we need to set up a time. The Bible says, train up a child in the way that it should go. And when it is old, it will remember and learn and be. How do we train? The other thing that reminds me is that in our world as well, we have husband and wife working so much out of the home. So where do we find time to train and to teach? With my children, I set up what I call the Yes But Conference every so often, where we would sit down. Every child could speak what their issues were, what they liked, what they didn't like, and no one could respond negatively. Each one got a chance, and that meant that we as parents were listening. We heard them. And then we also had opportunity to train and respond. I think that's one of the biggest things. If we can't train, how are they going to learn? And we live in chaos.
Yeah, communication is key, absolutely, for siblings and then parents to their kids. Now, how about forgiveness and apologies, Abe? How important are they as we develop a stronger relationship with our kids and grandkids?
I think that's a great thing. Apologies and forgiveness work together. And it depends on what is an apology. You see, so often in our world, we simply hear, well, I'm sorry. And what kind of a response? Oh, don't even think about it. Well, that's not dealing with anything. If I'm going to apologize, I need to apologize to the issue. What was the issue? That's what I'm apologizing for, and it needs to be from the heart. And then the response needs to be a response to the issue. Never say, oh, it was nothing. What needs to be said is, yes, you hurt me, and I thank you for the apology, and I really want to forgive you. But that doesn't mean that there's going to be reconciliation. When the apology is correct and the response is to the issue, you're opening the door for reconciliation. And I think that's one of the keys in all of this. I think back to what our government is trying to do with truth and reconciliation with our Aboriginal people. Okay, where's the truth and what's the reconciliation? Have we ever spelled it out? And so if you don't spell these things out to each other, it's just, I'm sorry, don't worry about it. That doesn't go anywhere in my books.
Abe, let's talk about discipline for just a moment here. I know when my son was younger, he hated the fact we put him in the corner, standing all alone in the corner, to show some discipline, but he'd appreciate it afterwards, and he would apologize, and we would clear the air about certain things, maybe if there's a misunderstanding as well. How important is discipline and maybe setting up that structure for our kids today?
I think discipline is increasingly important. In our world, if there's not going to be that kind of a setup, the world isn't going to cater to you. For example, I see a lot of parents in the modern world saying to their 2-year-old child, "What do you want for breakfast?" Day after day, what do you want for lunch, et cetera, et cetera. That child is way too young to make those decisions.
Chocolate. I want chocolate. Give me chocolate.
I want chocolate.
And ice cream, right?
That's not going to be the world they get into at all. And so I think discipline needs to be in moderation, but it needs to be in relation to what the problem was. Not just some wild thing out there, but try and build it so that they learn there are consequences. Look at the world today. A lot of people haven't learned consequences, and we're living with a lot of difficulty and chaos in our world because there are consequences. As you grow up and get into your job, there are going to be discipline issues. You need to learn them when you're young and when it's not so hard.
Let's circle back to structure for just a moment here, Abe. How important is it to really set up the boundaries for our kids?
Well, I think that's the key issue. If the kid's raised without any boundaries when they're young, they're not going to expect any boundaries when they go and work in an organization, and there are going to be boundaries, and they've never learned that. So how are they going to deal with boundaries when they've got a job if they've never learned it when they're young? We need to teach when they're younger so that they learn it and walk into life and walk into occupations and walk into situations with people where they need to learn to listen. And I think a lot of our young people do want boundaries. I remember the one dad talking to me, and his daughter was invited by the school to an issue where she knew she probably shouldn't go. And so she said to her dad, "Dad, will you please tell me I can't go? That way I save face when I face my kids, and you can take the blame, but you're not in the picture." I think that works.
Now, what's the balance between setting healthy boundaries, Abe, and on the flip side, giving your kids and maybe your teenagers some freedom?
I think the freedom comes when they learn where the freedom is within boundaries. For example, for the younger children, give them space, but set the boundaries. For example, I know some girls, when they start school, they already want to dress the way they want to dress. And so I would suggest to the mother, pick up what you think are reasonable ones, but give them an option about 3 or 4. But don't give them an option of the whole expanse of what they have, because that's not suitable. So let them make choices within boundaries so that they learn, okay, I can make a choice, but there are boundaries, because in life, that's how it's going to be. I'm going to have boundaries, but I'm also going to be able to learn how to make choices. Like with finances, give them small finances at the beginning so they can learn to be responsible and accountable, but within the boundaries of whatever their finances are.
Now let's talk about, we mentioned the boundaries, but how about when your kids disagree with you when it comes to set boundaries? I used to ask my father, well, why can't I do this? He said, because I said so. That was always his reasoning behind it, right? Well, no, kids need more than that. So how do we nurture that relationship and create a positive, healthy relationship when we're setting those boundaries?
Well, I can think of an example in my own life. My one daughter didn't have her driver's license yet, and she worked at a record shop, and the guy had a beautiful souped up, well, not a souped up car, but a very nice car, but he wanted to sell it. And she looked at that car and she wanted to buy it all the best way. So what can I do but say no? No, I didn't say no. I sat down with her. I said, okay, how can we work this out? Because you can't even drive it. If you're going to buy it, it's going to sit on the yard and just whatever. So I happened to have a friend who taught mechanics in the school, and he needed vehicles to teach mechanics to the kids. So I said to my daughter, go ahead and buy the thing. Let's talk to this guy, see if he'll take the car, use it for a whole year in the school. You'll get a car that's fixed up by the time you can drive it. That way you can get it, but there are boundaries set up and you're going to have to wait for it. I think if we can set up things like that with our kids to make them feel positive and yet within some kind of control factors, I think that might work.
You know, it's funny, when I was 16, I bought my first car, an old Datsun. I had just enough money, $1,000 to buy it, but it was a manual transmission, so I had to learn how to shift the manual transmission. And then I had to save up more money to insure it and register to put it on the road. So that took another 3-4 months. So
exactly, but that's a good plan. That works.
Yeah, it was a lesson, a life lesson, absolutely. So Abe, how important is it for parents to maybe play some games or activities with their kids to help maybe draw them a little closer for bonding, like bonding time with our children?
We talked about communications before. What better way to communicate with your kids than either play games with them or to do sports with them? It opens the door to conversation, and communication is the best thing. And especially if you're catering to some of their desires, even if you're not an athlete or anything, but you can support, you can be there, et cetera, et cetera. I think I've done a lot of counseling, and I asked this one couple once, what do you remember most about your parents? And the one person said, my dad was at every game I ever played. But the other person said, my dad loved me more than I could ever imagine. You know, those are two opposites, but they're both beautiful, and they bring in communication. I think we have forgotten the idea of communicating and then still disagreeing, but communicating and loving each other anyway. We don't have to think the same, but we need to be on the same page in the final end.
You know what I've noticed as a parent myself as well of 2 kids, my son and my daughter, is praising them, especially with their successes and helping them through their failures as well. What did we learn? Like a life lesson that's learned here. Abe, another big part of parenting is the process of passing our faith onto our children. How can we do this most effectively?
Well, we need to find time, first of all. I mean, like I said before, with all parents doing so much working outside of the home, and I'm not decrying that. It's a necessity in our world, I think. But it seems like that takes away time. And putting your faith in an encouraging way with your children is going to take time. And part of that time, I, for example, like to have devotions once a day. My dad had devotions every supper time. We always took 15, 20 minutes for him to teach us his faith. And then he have a question and answer period after we had eaten, if we had any questions about it. The other thing is, can we take them either to home groups or to Bible study groups or to church or to places like that? And that refers me back to how communicative is my church to everybody and including youth? Do I have people in the church that can communicate and relate to the young people and build their faith? But it's got to start at home. We cannot depend on the church to do it all. We are responsible to begin that process when they're young. And then we encourage them as they mature to find it in other places as well.
And very important to live our faith as well. Abe, I think most of us as children when we were younger had some insecurity issues. What child didn't? Any thoughts on the importance of hugging and loving our children, like the physical touch and communicating that love to our children?
Well, you're talking to the wrong guy. I'm a hugger, and I love to hug, but I have to be very careful. In our modern world, that's not accepted by everybody. It's not even accepted by society in many ways. We have become very individualistic. And so I have had to become very sensitive to how people feel about being hugged and about touching. I remember, especially during COVID, now this was during COVID, but out in New Brunswick, there was a kindergarten boy who hugged one of the kindergarten girls, and they took him to court. Now that's really extreme, but they did take him to court because he wasn't supposed to hug anybody. But you know, we are missing the personal touch. That is so encouraging. And if we can just live with it without reacting, I think it's a very positive thing. I think touch is crucial. The Bible tells us, what did Jesus do? He took the little children and he put them on his lap. And I'm thinking he hugged them. Suffer the little children to come unto me and forbid them not. We have gotten to the stage of a little bit too much forbidding. I think the encouragement needs to be there.
You know, you're right. The human interaction is vital to healthy relationships, whatever
Yes.
they are. Now, it seems we're getting busier and busier these days, Abe, with scattered schedules for parents, many different family members always on the road. How important is it to sit down during family time and have meals together?
I think that's a key. In my family, when I grew up, we always had at least one meal together. The supper meal, we were together. Nowadays, with the kids scattering all over the place, the parents taking them here and there, find one meal where you can be together. Even at the beginning of the day, that's not possible anymore. Some dads are leaving at 6 o'clock in the morning and the kids aren't even out of bed yet, getting ready for school. There needs to be a place. It doesn't have to be around a meal. I like the meal idea because that's open discussion. That's where everybody's just relaxed and they're eating and they're joking, and it's a good place for interaction and for discussion and for questions. But nowadays, it's hard to sit down to a meal together with even the kids going all over the place. But my idea is somewhere, find a time in the day, and if it's not every day, find a time somewhere during the week, a couple of times, to sit together as a family. That's relationships. That's necessary in many areas of our lives.
Let's sit down and break bread together. Abe Block is a retired Lethbridge pastor. He's also a grandfather, great-grandfather, and of course a father. Thanks so much for some of the great parenting advice today, Abe.
My joy. God bless.
You as well. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless. Thanks for watching.